I was standing there, just bobbed down behind the fence, and he goes, "Craig, there's an armed gunman with a rifle within any proximity of here. We don't know where he is at the moment. Get your bloody gun out and get it out now."
I'm here with Gregory, well-accomplished man and a family man. Extensive career in policing, starting out in community, remote areas, all the way to overseas deployment. Craig, thanks for coming in to have a chat with me today.
Thanks for having me, Ray. It's a pleasure.
Please tell me about your background and experience from when you started all the way to where you're at the moment.
Yeah, well, I have to go way back into the 90s, which is showing my age a little bit, but look, interesting enough, I actually started doing a business degree as an undergraduate many years ago, and I wasn't really enjoying it. I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel, and thought I'd change over and did a degree in social science in policing, and then through Edith Cowan University here, and then went into the police academy and absolutely loved it. Found my good bunch of colleagues and peers alike, and got into the academy, and then transferred out to a lovely country posting called Meekatharra, which, if anyone knows, it's about 8 hours away from Perth in the middle of the Western Australian desert, and predominantly an Aboriginal community out there. And the people make the place, and what I found out there was the sense of community that you had working with the the teachers, the nurses, the RFDS crew that was there, and of course the other police officers. Really gave me a good grounding in policing, where you have to do all of the work yourself. There's no, for most of the time I was there was no detectives, there was no forensics team. There was, there's a total of about 11 police officers there for most of my time there, and you're relying on each other to back yourselves up. So the way you go about policing is very much using your skills in terms of your verbal responses rather than your physical responses. Understanding that you're generally outnumbered if there is an incident or an issue, and of course, engaging with the community so that you're really pushing that strong community policing activity, so that you have that rapport with the community. So hopefully you avoid those, violent or stressful situations altogether. From there, came back to Perth, and my wife was a teacher with the School of the Air up there, so she used to teach kindergarten over HF radio to the kids out in the outstations in the middle of nowhere, which is interesting as well. So we both had a really great experience up there, and something that very rarely exists for people in today's society. So I came back to Perth and went to a specialist group, which is now defunct, called the District Support Group for West Metro District, and again, really good crew of people. Lots of, so we were the response vehicles for Northside, essentially. So anything to do with armed robberies and some serious sex offences and the like. So we dealt with them as the main crew that would respond, but for the major incident group. And then I did my detective training school, went to the major incident group, which was part of major crime. So I did a stint there, and Mirror Book of Detectives and the like. And I was also afforded the opportunity to basically be seconded across to the Australian Federal Police and over to East Timor, where I worked in Dili there with the AFP, which later became a United Nations mission, and ended up running the Dili Detectives Office.
You were there for quite a while in East Timor?
Yeah, so it's about 6 months was a tenure, and mainly because it became a UN mission. West Australian Police removed their support for the mission, so I was still employed actively by WA Police, seconded to the AFP and seconded to the United Nations. So got pulled back from that, which was great, and came back to Western Suburbs Detectives, which is the old Claremont Detectives, which doesn't exist anymore. And on the back of that, just sought some advice from other people outside of the police community, and in fact, there was a gentleman who was an ex-police detective himself, so he used to be in charge of the Victorian Fraud Squad, and I just sought a little bit of coaching from him in terms of his success and how he had transitioned from the police and what role he's moved into, and he was actually a director at Ernst & Young at the time, and he said, look, first thing you should look at is doing an MBA and investing in your study and growth. And so I took his advice, and with my brother-in-law, we both registered to do our Masters in Business Administration through University of New South Wales at the same time. I just put the feet in the toe in the water a little bit and had a look and see what opportunities were out there in the marketplace, and applied for 2 jobs with the federal government, and I got both of them. So I took the first one, which was lead investigator for the Workplace Ombudsman, and I think I did something like 4 weeks there because I got the other offer, which was a better one.
That's a good problem to have.
So thanks very much. And 4 weeks in, I said, look, here's my notice. I'm going to head over the road to this other place, which was then it was called OTS, which was the Office of Transport Security, which is now Aviation and Maritime Security Services for the Department of Home Affairs. So that was, again, really good opportunity working in terms of transitioning out of the police, working with like-minded people, really driving a regulatory regime or regulatory environment across security regulated industry. So what that is essentially is post 9/11, the federal government became signatory to a number of United Nations conventions, one being the ISPS, the International Maritime Organisation, International Ships and Port Facility Security Code.
Wow,
and
that's a handful.
It is, mate. And then the ICAO, which is the International Civil Aviation Organisation's ICAO Convention, which is all about aviation and maritime security. So we've got legislation in Australia, and that department administers that legislation. So going out doing risk management, basically mitigating and minimising the risk of terrorist attack on critical infrastructure in Australia. So really good role. Gave me opportunities to head across to the US to do some work with Homeland Security over there and the TSA. And you really get around to some absolutely amazing parts of Australia as well. And I had the good fortune of being able to develop their investigative and enforcement capability for that department, working with the AFP AFP, what are they called? Border Force now.
Yep.
And the Commonwealth DPP to really drive the enforcement capability around that legislation. So that was a great opportunity there as well. So again, working, keeping in train with that original skill set that was developed through the police and driving that across multiple areas and multiple industries. So
that's a lot of opportunities, a lot of exposure to many different areas in policing as well, which is excellent. And what was the most enjoyable part for you?
Look, it's interesting. There's always the adrenaline push that you really enjoy in policing. But I think that the best thing for me is that and this is after I left OTS, I went and worked at Ernst & Young for a while. I really struggled there because the harder I worked, the more money someone else made. Whereas in policing, the reward is an intrinsic personal reward that you cannot get in a commercial marketplace. So the best thing about my policing career was actually knowing that I've gone to work today and I've made someone's life better. I've actually delivered something to someone that's been beneficial for them as a human being. And that's reward enough for me. I didn't need the money, and no one joins the police for money. Let's be honest. There's not enough money in there for police officers.
Right.
But that sense of doing right and that strong, mindset of right and wrong and helping those that can't help themselves, I think was the biggest reward for me out of all of that.
That is the biggest reward. Brilliant. So let's talk about your career as a detective. When did it start? What year?
Oh God, I think I did my DTS detective training school probably in about 2003 or 2004.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, it's that whole system and structure's changed somewhat. So
there's a lot that has changed since you went through the recruitment process up to now. It's a different school altogether.
Yeah. Well, I think it was always as a uniform officer, and as I said, had that great opportunity to make it there. Well, I was also doing the crime scene management, going and prosecuting or investigating and prosecuting some significant crimes, violent crimes against the persons and sex offences and the like. A lot of the guys don't get that exposure these days because they've got a hierarchical system in place, basically, that says that unless you're a certain level of investigator, you can't do that. So I had the good fortune of being exposed to some. Well, not good fortune, but from a
experience
perspective,
definitely.
Yeah. Sorry, sounds bad, but getting there and really cutting your teeth on some serious crime, and that's how you get the experience to become a better investigator. And unless you have that exposure, you really you're always kind of 1 foot behind the next person. And even to apply to do your detective training back then, you had to show examples of some significant crimes that you've investigated. And my example I had was this couple up in Balga here in Perth, where a couple of people broke into their house and ushered them around whilst they're naked because they were asleep. It was the early morning. Ushered them around their house at gunpoint and stole all these items from them, and then stole their car. And we had a armed offender stop, and we got the baddies and everything like that. And I was, because I'd shown that I was capable in amongst the ranks, that I took it to the local detective's office and I said, no, you're actually doing it right, mate. You keep going with it. And they gave me that opportunity. And that was my example that I used to get into my detective training. And there's a lot of detectives out there that probably wouldn't even have that example even today.
Even today, that's right. Yeah.
And in terms of choosing the charge, it was aggravated burglary and commit armed robbery with him, which you don't really see that as a charge very often. So definitely a feather in the cap. But yeah, seen a lot of serious crime and the like, and working at major crime in particular at the Major Incident Group showed some significant crimes that you just don't see. There's not a lot of media coverage of. What we see in the media is kind of the tip of the iceberg in terms of what actually goes on.
That's right.
Within our community.
Yeah, absolutely. So now, look, in particular incident that you're involved in, I'm not sure if I'm right here, but around 2003, where you're involved in an incident where there was shooting involved.
Yeah. So that was I was at West Metro DSG at that stage, and I was seconded just to help out actually a shift over at the Stirling Police Station. I don't think Stirling Police Station even exists anymore.
Right.
And it was a night shift, and driving. We'd actually just been at the BP service station in Osborne Park for a quick coffee, and driving back down along Scarborough Beach Road. And I had a good friend of mine who was one of the narc dog handlers, and we were just kind of tailgating him back towards our office, which was in Innaloo, and he lived around the corner there. And we got flagged down on the side of the road at the quick service station, mobile service station, which is just next to Harvey Norman there. And bloke said it was a strange bloke. He's acting really weird in his car outside the service station here. And interestingly enough, we pulled in there, and I thought there was a car coming up, but it was actually the one parked up hard alongside the service station, and just got out of the vehicle. And this is where you've really got to be on your toes, because you don't know what's around the corner at any given time of your shift.
Yeah.
And so I just went round to this guy's window, tapped on, mate, you're right, what's going on? And he just charged up his car, as in turned it on, and my mate who had the narcotics dog, he was parked across the back of this car just to see what was going on, because they said he was acting suspicious. And he threw it in reverse, rammed the police car behind him, and then tried to put it back in drive and tried to line me up against the brick wall of the shop there. And he went back and forth a few times, and I smashed the window and tried to turn with a torch and tried to turn the keys of the car off, and got thrown forward and the like. And then I remember I was on the floor and trying to stand up, and I could see the front of this LTD Falcon driving straight at my head. So as I'm trying to get to my feet again, I fired progressively as I stood up, and I think I got the first one in the griddle of the car, and then the other five, in his basically through the windscreen of the vehicle, straight at his face, at his head. So
he stopping him.
He swerved the car away from me, because obviously here in Western Australia we use hollow point bullets.
Yep, that's right.
Which is a breach of the Geneva Convention, but it's obviously in line with urban warfare. So the idea is that the round stops within the target and doesn't hit people behind.
Yep.
So when it hits the glass of the windscreen, mushroomed out, and
of course
took off half his face. And my partner shot him through the sidewall of the vehicle in the leg with a .38 Special as well. So he survived.
That's right. There's the revolvers back then.
Yeah, so he had a revolver. I had a Smith & Wesson Sigma pistol,
right.
because I was in a specialist group. But my partner had a .38 Special revolver. So
right.
they did more damage. They had more stopping power than the 40 cal. So
yeah. Right. So now let's talk about the use of force in that incident there. Clearly that was justified by you 100%.
Yep.
Because your life was in danger. If you didn't fire in the right time, you probably would have been run over and
That's right.
not with us today.
Yep.
Right? How do you feel from the original training that you've done up until that incident where you had to make a decision to draw your firearm and use it?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think obviously in Western Australia we've got to be in imminent jeopardy and precluded from taking any other action in order to lawfully use your firearm or lethal force as an option. So going through the academy and everything else,
especially back then. I mean, the program has changed dramatically over the years, and and the program that you have in place now in Austria is quite good.
Yep.
Right, as a basic start, it's a good program.
Yep.
I can't really fault it. It can be always improved and a little bit better, just like everything we have in life. But it's quite good. But after that,
yep,
that's where I have a problem with. After that is the exposure that police officers get for the use of force training, use of firearms, training and development under stressful situations as well is very minimal. So I'm actually interested to know, back in the day when you, after you've done your recruitment and got out on the job, how much exposure before then to 2003 where you actually had to use your firearm in a life-threatening situation like that?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one because I think I wasn't the best shot going through the police academy. I can tell you that, especially with the old revolvers. You used to kick a little bit and you'd miss your targets pretty easily. I think it was a lot more. Well, I thought the academy training in particular was pretty stringent. It was actually a good program. There was a lot of, including the duress shooting and that kind of stuff, low light level shooting as well, yep, which was key. And I think they really did tailor it around real life situations. So I think they definitely got it right in terms of that initial exposure to firearms and how to manage them, etc. I think going out into one of the challenges we've got in West Australia is the tyranny of distance as well. And so, being out in Meekatharra and doing your recoil shoots, so you have to go and do that every 12 months, I think it was, from memory.
Every year, once a year. Yeah, that's right. It still is.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was difficult simply because, they either had to train someone locally within the station, but with, the tenure policy, people moving around, you're not guaranteed to have someone in the station that can actually train you. So they had to send basically a crew of guys from Ost Unit to come and do your training on a regular basis out in the country areas.
And you didn't have the fancy police academy that you have now.
Well, I did my DTS there, but when I first, back then, that didn't exist back then. So we did a lot of our metropolitan reshoots out at the Pine Valley Pistol Club, or at Maylands Academy. But there's only limited slots as well. You've got pressures on getting on your shift. You've got your 3-panel roster we used to have as well, so days, nights and afternoons. So it was constantly a challenge to get out there, and generally everyone left it to the last minute to get in and do your recoil shoot. Because it was just too difficult to do it otherwise because of shift requirements, and there's always someone else who needs to get it done more urgently than you do. Look, in terms of the tactical model, I think that actually changed when I first from when I first got in there, which was more of a linear tactical model, where they say it was an escalating process, and then they had the round model, which said, well, actually you choose the best force option based on your situation. And I think that was a real change in practice that I saw was fundamental to the way we approach our work, and I thought that was delivered quite well. In terms of if you rock up somewhere, you don't necessarily have to go through that escalation process. And they said, even if you do it in your head, you don't have to go. You look at the situation and you choose the best tactical option to resolve that situation.
Absolutely, but it's open for your discretion.
That's right.
And I understand why that is in place as well. But I've been involved in training and development for well over 15 years now, in particular within the firearms area. So where I struggle, that I still have a lot of people come in that are highly stressed and uncertain and just don't have the confidence to even deploy the weapon system that they have in a life-threatening situation. Okay, when can I draw my firearm?
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about just police or, I'm talking about armed security professionals as well within the cash and transit. I mean, we give these people permits to carry firearms in public, right? We have a massive responsibility to make sure that we have the right education, the right training and development programs. And also even the police recruitment program is really good. And it really prepares the individual to go out there on the job and do a good job. However, after that, to shoot once a year and to shoot only 24 rounds once a year, you might get some practice on the day, and most of them do. You might shoot another 50 rounds or 100 rounds, etc. Let's talk about the use of force model when it comes to when do you draw your firearm? When, in your opinion, is it justified to even put your hand on your firearm? Let's start from that.
Okay.
When can you touch your firearm in public?
So pretty much any time I did a traffic stop, I have my hand on my gun.
As a police officer?
As a police officer.
Okay.
Every time, because I don't know what's in that car.
Right.
Either that or you avoid doing traffic stops.
Right.
But no, every time.
You don't see that often though, especially here. And that's a very good point actually, because you don't know. I mean, action is always faster than a reaction, and you're always going to be reacting. You're never going to be going in.
Well, the golden rule is if someone pulls a knife on you, they'll be able to stab you before you've got the time to get your gun out of the holster.
Absolutely.
So within 7 meters away from you. So
and some.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So always be prepared. I mean, I see some absolutely shocking practice, and basic practice within policing, not just in WA, but globally, where no one should go up and knock on the front door of a house for any inquiry and stand in front of the door, because you just cannon fodder. You need to stand at the side of the door, have some form of cover and concealment, have that situational awareness for everything that you're doing.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, and for me, I still remember when I learnt that lesson, and I was there was again when I was at DSG, there was a gunman that was running around the back streets of Yokine one day, and he had a rifle and he was jumping fences and the like. And we pulled in there, and he'd already fired some shots up and down Flinders Street in Yokine at the time. And we drove in there, and I was working with a guy who was a bit more senior to me, and I was standing there, just bobbed down behind the fence, and he goes, "Craig, there's an armed gunman with a rifle within any proximity of here. We don't know where he is at the moment. Get your bloody gun out and get it out now." He goes, and I still remember that. It almost chills me, because I'm like, holy shit, I wasn't prepared. I hadn't thought about it. I lacked situational awareness, and I should have known that I needed to be in a position to protect myself, and I wasn't at that time. So I've learnt from that, and hopefully I'll pass on similar advice to others over the time. But
of course,
having that situational awareness is absolutely paramount to the safety of yourself and also the safety
it's
of the
all
public.
about officer safety and public safety, of course. Look, thank you for coming in today and have a chat, and no doubt we'll catch up again. Excellent.
Definitely.
Thanks, Greg.
No, thanks for your time.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Very good.